Hello, I'm Alex Buxton with Allen West & Sco, and we both work for Zions Bank Public Finance. This video is a continuation of our series giving individuals who have some familiarity with fixed income securities a little more understanding with a behind-the-scenes look at municipal bonds. Today we're talking about the different types of bond sales. Alan, give us a rundown of the different ways bonds are sold.
Sure, Alex. So once a municipality decides it needs to borrow money for a project, it has to decide on how it's going to find those investors that are going to buy their investments. Who's going to lend them the money? And so there's really two ways that they do that. Once they get their bond rating and they have their structure, they have to decide how they're going to pick their underwriter. And the underwriter is the person who is kind of the in-between person who is working for the municipality that's issuing the bonds and identifying who the investors are who are going to buy those bonds.
You almost could kind of liken it to selling the bonds to a wholesaler, which would be the underwriter, and them turning around and selling it retail to the end investor.
That's right. In fact, I think
to use kind of a clothing analogy there.
No, that's right. In fact, I think it's kind of one of the reasons they call them an underwriter is because they're underwriting the risk, right?
Right.
They're buying all the bonds and they're placing with investors, and in some ways, you don't care who the end investors are, right? You just want to get the best rate you can and the best terms. And so the question is, how are you going to get the best rate and the best terms? And it depends on the type of bond issue, but essentially there's two ways to pick that underwriter. The first way is through what we call a negotiated sale, where you actually pick your underwriter up front, and the underwriter is a financial institution that has broad access to these investors.
Right.
And you can do that either by just working with someone who you have some familiarity with, or you can go through an RFP process and ask people to give you suggestions, and you can pick someone through that kind of process. Or alternatively, you can choose to have what we call a competitive bond sale or auction, a bond auction, where you pick a day and a time and you let all the different investment banks and underwriters submit bids on that day on the price of what those bonds are going to be that they're willing to buy them at.
So let's look at the reasons why an issuer may choose to do a competitive sale as opposed to a negotiated sale. I think you could summarize it with 3 points. First and foremost, what kind of bond is it, and is there a story behind the bond? If it's a general, we call them kind of vanilla type bonds, straightforward, I think a competitive sale is probably more conducive to that. If there is a story behind it, the bonds, there's different structure or something like that, a negotiated sale might be more to your liking. Secondly, flexibility on timing. With a competitive sale, if you have to get your bonds sold, regardless of interest rate environment and so forth, then you go with the competitive sale knowing that you're going to get the best bid that day from various underwriters. If you're a little more flexible with your timing, a negotiated sale might work, maybe like a refunding type bond, which we talked about before on this program. And lastly, I think that structure-wise, if there's a specific structure you're after, maybe you work with the negotiated underwriter up front, whereas with the competitive sale, again, you kind of get what you get, but you know that you're getting the best interest rate that day that you sell bonds.
That's right. And I think another way to look at that and that analysis is just trying to ask, is this a really strong credit that we're going to have a lot of interest and a lot of investors in? Or is it something that maybe is a little bit more difficult to find investors for?
Well, thank you so much, Alan. We've been talking about bond sales today. Thanks for joining us.